Welcome to City Inside Out. I'm your host, Brian Callanan. Seattle continues to struggle with rising homelessness numbers. So why are so many affordable housing units sitting empty? Reports show vacancy rates at publicly subsidized units in Seattle have increased fivefold over the last decade.
If you're experiencing housing instability, it's challenging.
Market changes have increased rents in Seattle's so-called affordable units, pushing low-income renters out and pushing affordable housing providers towards selling their buildings.
I'm sharing an executive order.
Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson wants solutions and has floated the idea of using vacant affordable units as homeless shelter spaces.
We want to look at a diversity of strategies.
What's it going to take to get affordable housing providers back on solid ground? And are Seattle's eviction bans part of the problem?
People that are working full-time that have the funds to pay it and are not paying their rent.
We're talking to affordable housing providers to see what their plans are to keep their programs sustainable.
The mayor can make meaningful policy change.
Learn the latest about this affordable housing dilemma. You can't afford not to. Next on City Inside Out. And joining us to discuss this issue, we have John Grant, Senior Policy Advisor on Housing and Homelessness for the Seattle Mayor's Office. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
We also have with us Patience Malaba, Executive Director for the Housing Development Consortium, an association of 215 organizations advocating for affordable housing. Patience, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We also have with us John Torrence, who is Director of Housing Development for LIHI, the Low Income Housing Institute, an affordable housing developer. And until very recently, John was actually working with John at LIHI. Thank you very much for bringing those pencils he left in his desk. That was very, very kind of you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you very much for being here, John. And let me start with you, if I could. I want to talk about what the average person is seeing here, because what's happening in Seattle might not make a lot of sense. We have a serious homelessness crisis. Everybody knows that. But then we have many, many affordable housing units that are vacant. Can you give us a big picture of what's happening here?
Yeah, I think one of the things we're seeing is that the rental market over the last few years has been, let's say, we've seen a big influx in studio and one-bedroom units, which has really driven down the costs of market rate units to the point where if you are trying to rent an affordable unit for $100 more, $200 more a month, you can go live in a luxury housing building with all the amenities, the gym, the meditation room.
Sure.
And you also don't have to do the kind of yearly income certifications that are required of affordable housing.
I see.
We're seeing more people pushed away from affordable housing, especially for those smaller units, towards market rate housing.
Got it. Patience, I want to get your take on this, because I know there are a lot of providers over this past year that actually sold off their buildings. Affordable housing providers got out of the business, essentially, in some ways. What have you been hearing from the organizations that you represent?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to set the baseline understanding that we've made incredible progress in King County as a region throughout all 39 cities and in Seattle to produce housing at scale over the last few years. And that is both net income, new rent-restricted units that have been produced, as well as market rate housing. There's a great report that King County released in December that actually shows these numbers across the spectrum. On the income-restricted front, between 2019 and 2023, we were able to produce 6,400 units, new affordable housing that came into the market. With that reality, we were faced over the last few months with a small glut of oversupply, particularly because we've produced the small units, studio, one-unit apartment.
And people need bigger places sometimes.
People do need bigger places. And as a result, rents have plateaued for a little bit now. But income-restricted rents is set by a system that is older. It's set by HUD at the federal level. It uses area median income. And across the board, homeowners and renters across the city have seen their incomes go. So AMI has continued to go up.
Area median income, keep going, yep.
Yes, and as a result, folks who live in affordable housing find themselves sometimes not able to afford the rents that are being set and hence having an option to even go with the market level rent because it's now slightly lower than the regulated rents.
Okay.
So it is a product of success that we've had.
Success in building, I see what you're saying.
Success in producing housing. And I do believe with the right market absorption, we're going to see a right sizing of the market overall.
Okay.
Do we hear affordable housing providers begin to sell assets? I do think on that front, it's important to understand that affordable housing providers have a fiduciary responsibility for asset management. It's purely asset management, assessing areas where buildings are performing well and there is sufficient cash flow, assessing buildings where they are old and maintenance costs are higher and therefore they are going forward to sell.
Okay.
But there are also instances where, because of the great work that our members have done, we have seen an increase in physical occupancy in quite a number of those buildings.
Okay.
So there's a plateauing of some of the sales that we were seeing earlier.
Okay.
There's still some challenges, of course, against some odds in areas where people are still lagging behind in rents, and there's a lot of work to do on that.
And we are going to talk about that piece in just a little bit. John Grant, let me talk to you about this. You've been on the job with the mayor's office for a few weeks here, but I know you've been in the affordable housing and tenant rights space for about 2 decades here. What's your assessment of this problem Seattle's facing right now with these vacant affordable housing units?
Well, I really want to echo what the other panelists are saying. I mean, there is an affordability crisis in the city of Seattle. That's no mystery to folks. And just for some stats out there, you know, you're considered cost burden if over half of your income is going towards your housing costs, and 77% of Seattleites who are extremely low income are considered cost burden. So we know that there is a tremendous need of affordable housing, and just like John and Patience mentioned, there is a bit of a gap right now in terms of what units are affordable to who. So if folks are thinking it's kind of crazy, right, that we'd have vacant units and a homelessness crisis, we agree. And this is one of the things that Mayor Wilson campaigned on, that we want to try to make these units more affordable for very low-income folks. And it should be noted that the units that are largely vacant are way unaffordable for somebody who's homeless. So what are ways that we can provide rental subsidies or other types of strategies to bring those rents down to be affordable for folks at that lower income band?
Got it. And we'll dive into that piece, too, in just a second here. Patience, let me go back to you because you worked with the previous mayoral administration to get $170 million in funding over this past year to preserve and stabilize the affordable housing market. That was the largest investment in affordable housing in city history, according to the city of Seattle. Can you talk to us about where that money is going? Will this help prevent affordable housing providers from selling off their buildings? What's going on?
Yeah, no, the city has been strategic in their investments for affordable housing. The $170 million was actually just awarded last week with dedicated funds that are moving forward new production. So there's a dedicated bucket that is helping us move new construction and new homes that will come online. And then there's a dedicated bucket that is looking at preservation proactively. We have an opportunity across the nation to establish a clear strategy on preservation. And the third bucket is really dedicated to stabilization. So right-sizing the debt structure for some of the providers in existing buildings, so we have a sustainable path to address some of the operational gaps that are showing up.
Do you need to put more in that third bucket at this point, just in looking at the gap that's happening right now?
Well, we dedicated $58 million with an award just last week. I think that's a significant support. Is there need for more resources? Absolutely. There is still another award that will be released in the next few weeks that's continuously supporting stabilization, addressing the increase in cost for insurance, the increase in cost for operating business across the board in affordable housing.
Got it. Thank you for that. Please.
And onto that question of stabilization, I think this presents the mayor with an opportunity through the Office of Housing to rethink how awards are made. And so typically the city wants to give no more than they have to. And so they've pushed for, the City Office of Housing has pushed for higher incomes, higher rents so that you can maximize the amount of private debt on projects. And so you end up with this situation where you're, to go back to everyone's comments, that you are trying to meet this very narrow band. So like a 60% AMI person that perfect person earns $66,000 a year. That is about, what, $32 an hour, full time. That person, so if you are a lower income individual earning minimum wage, you're not going to be able to afford that 60 or 50% rent.
Yeah.
And so you end up with a situation where you're trying to find low-income individuals at a very narrow band, and you're really unable to. And so we've had to come in with these stabilization funds to pay down the amount of permanent debt. And so the city has an opportunity to increase the number of low-income units. Somebody earning 30% AMI is still earning $33,000 a year, which is, at minimum wage, that's up to 30 hours a week, which is like a good job.
Yeah.
That is like a good amount of money. And they are considered in this city extremely low income.
Right.
And so by bringing in more 30 and 40% units and sizing the debt on these projects to those lower amounts, you have this opportunity to really take the burden off of these affordable buildings to find these individuals that, these magic individuals who can afford those rents.
And John Grant, let me talk to you about this, and we'll try to move past the magic as best we can here. But I hear what you're saying, that it's rare to find these people in that way. You've heard about some of these opportunities here. Does more focus need to be on these people making 30% area median income, or what's the general thinking here?
Well, I think that's what we're seeing in the market right now, that if you have the choice between moving into a rent-regulated unit and a market rate unit, and the rents are more or less the same, you're not getting you're seeing increases in the vacancies in the affordable housing units as a result of that. And just to kind of make it clear to viewers, just so people are clear what we're talking about, debt restructuring and things like that,
Please.
just so folks know, the bigger a loan that a property has to build the building means the higher the rents are going to be. So this stabilization fund prioritized funding for 855 units to make sure that those rents can be stable in the long run, because what it did is it restructured that debt and kind of released a lot of affordable housing providers from having to service that debt with those rents. So what I think we need to see is rents more affordable for minimum wage earners, folks who are less than that 60% area median income. And that is one of the things that the mayor's office is looking at. What are ways that we can make sure that affordable housing is truly affordable to the folks that need it most?
Did you please?
I do think it's important for the mayor to take a full view. There was a fault in our strategy. We focused on unit count for a long time. We focused on over leveraging the debt that we had available, and therefore we produced a significant amount of small units. Now, do we overcorrect and just focus on, today the market is identifying a need at the lowest income level? There's absolutely a clear need, and we need to focus on that section. We also need larger family-sized housing, 2-bedroom apartments plus, across the board to be produced as part of the market. But we also cannot ignore the reality that we need housing across the income spectrum.
Yeah.
So as we set the recourse, we've got to continue to produce in those AMI trenches while we are creating a new dedicated focus to the lower income and larger family size units.
She was building those units right in front of you.
Yeah, I know, and we need them desperately. So I think one thing that is also worth noting is that very soon the city is going to be finalizing its interlocal agreement with the Seattle social housing developer.
Very important.
Which is an exciting new opportunity to build more mixed income affordable housing. And I think that gets to what Patience is talking about.
For people of those higher area median incomes,
that we, not just higher, but that a diversity of income ranges, that higher income folks are kind of help subsidizing the lower income folks that are in these properties.
That's the point of social housing, yeah.
That is kind of the vision for the Seattle social housing developer. And we're very excited by the new leadership there, and this is going to be yet another tool in the city's toolbox to address the affordability crisis. And this is the year that we're going to see it really take flight.
Could those empty units be used by the social housing developer? I know there's a lot of moving parts, but would that be a possibility?
Not unless the Seattle social housing developer were to outright purchase the property.
Okay.
But I do think that there are other opportunities to find ways to leverage those vacant units to support the needs of our community.
Thank you very much. I want to move on to another thorny topic here, and that would be evictions. John Torrence, let me start with you.
Yeah.
Seattle has a number of protections in place for renters, like many cities, including a ban on evictions in the winter and during the school year. The concept behind the bans is to protect renters from becoming homeless, but at the same time, this is costing affordable housing providers millions in lost rent each year. Let's talk about this. How are eviction bans affecting LIHI? What needs to change here? Let's get into it.
Yeah, I want to start by saying that We are in the business of housing low-income individuals, and evicting people is always the last step after many other options. And so, first and foremost, we try to understand why somebody is unable to pay their rent. Have they lost their job? Are they having any type of family or medical emergency? We try to set up a back payment plan for paying those rent arrears. We try to, if possible, in a building where there are lower income units that would be available, moving that person from, let's say, like a 50% AMI building with a higher rent down to a 30% AMI unit with a lower rent as a way to help them afford their rent. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, we are finding that there are quite a few people with large arrears. We are finding that there are instances of people that are working full-time that have the funds to pay it and are not paying their rent. And so we have had to move forward with eviction because it affects not only that building's ability to function, but it affects the entire portfolio, and it affects the way that investors, that bankers, that the city, that the state look at LIHI as a developer. And if they are seeing buildings not performing, they say, well, maybe I shouldn't give you money for this next one. Mm. So it not only hurts the developer's existing portfolio, but threatens the possibility of future housing down the line.
Got it. Patience, some thoughts on this. We talked with the Housing Justice Project about this. They told Seattle Channel there's been some cases where tenants are being evicted for being behind just a few $100s. I just wanted to get into this. Do you tell members, don't evict, work it out instead? Or can you talk about this process and what it's like?
Yeah, our members are in the business of housing people and ensuring that they are staying stably housed. It's going to be important for the new leadership, the mayor, as she comes on board and sets out her vision, to really take a close look at the issue. It's important to protect residents. It's also important to ensure sustainability of affordable housing production, preservation, and housing production across the board. And there are targeted areas where the mayor can make meaningful policy change. The ability for providers to know who lives in their units, the ability for providers to remove someone in instances where safety is undermined in a building. Okay. Those are very targeted opportunities for policy. It's not a sweeping change. Right. It is intentional policy making that can ensure the affordability agenda is delivered on. Yeah. Because when you have investors who are looking at our market as a high-profile risk area, that will undermine our ability to continue to see more homes come online. Yeah. And I think the mayor understands that there's a complex issue here. It's a delicate one, and I fundamentally believe that the coalition that can get this policy passed is one that will be built by the mayor.
And I want to make sure I ask you this, John Grant, if I could, because City of Tacoma recently changed its eviction policy to allow affordable housing providers to evict renters during winter months, evict during the school year. I know as mayor-elect, Mayor Wilson has disagreed with that idea. Can you talk about her approach to this eviction issue as mayor, please?
Yeah, and I think it's really helpful to understand the history of this issue. This is really a legacy of the pandemic. Back then, the governor set out a very broad moratorium that froze all evictions statewide. And that remained in place for some time. It has since been rescinded, but as a result of that, there was this incredible backlog in the court system, even years after the moratorium was lifted. Now, it's important to understand the distinction between that and the Seattle moratorium on winter and school evictions. Okay. For example, the winter moratorium is from December 1st to March 1st, so this is about a 3-month period. Mm-hmm. It is not actually freezing the eviction process in place. It is a legal defense that a tenant can raise. It does not prevent the landlord from then proceeding with an eviction against you. So you're still going to wind up in court. What it freezes in place is when the sheriff actually enforces the eviction. So at most, it might be adding another 30 days to the eviction process for a standard eviction for non-payment. So it's important to understand that the focus on the moratorium has really been driven by this longstanding legacy of there being a backlog at the court where evictions were taking 6 months or more. Yeah. And since then, as I think recently as February of last year, the King County Courthouse added 2 dedicated justices just focusing on evictions to help work through that backlog. So the pressure on this issue has been a little bit alleviated. I would say that I think that we want to look at a diversity of strategies to address rent arrears that we're seeing. What can we do to ramp up stabilization funds? What can we do to make sure that our housing providers are being made whole at the end of the year? Because the point that Patience made is 1,000% correct. We cannot have a scenario where investors feel like they cannot be doing business in the city of Seattle.
Right.
So we need to make sure that we're taking very intentional steps to make sure that our affordable housing portfolio is protected and balancing that with the needs of tenant protections for at-risk tenants.
Can I ask briefly if you have some ideas, some guidance as to how eviction rules, do the bans need to be loosened so much? And any thoughts to pass on here or that you're thinking about with HDC?
This is a delicate issue that will require a coalition that sits down and identifies the policies together. We do have clear ideas of the policies that must change, but we're looking forward to sitting down with the mayor, talking through those policies, building consensus, building a coalition partnership with council, housing providers across the spectrum, so we can get policy passed.
Okay. I know there's a meeting that's happening very soon, so looking forward to hearing that. John Torrence, some thoughts here about how to guide eviction policy going forward? Again, it is a very delicate issue.
Oh, I completely agree, and I think the mayor's office has another opportunity, another path through this, and it is through kind of operating supports of providing not just like a backfilling of lost rents, but providing units with more structured operating supports into, project-based operating supports for buildings, where the unit has the operating cash instead of it going to the individual renters, which would really help to stabilize these buildings.
Okay. Thank you for that. I do need to start wrapping up with you, and Patience, I'll start with you. And I just wanted to put it in perspective, Seattle voters have been very supportive of housing measures over the past several years on the ballot. The housing levy in 2023, for example, nearly 70% of voters said yes to a 7-year, $970 million package. I'm just trying to figure out where we go from here in terms of where the money's going, right? Yes. Is the future of affordable housing in Seattle going to involve building more units or trying to prop up the ones already in place? Can you talk about where we're heading in the future here?
Yeah. I mean, we've got to treat housing as the infrastructure that it is. And today, we must absolutely maintain the progress we've made. So it starts with the stabilization of the existing portfolio that we have. And the city has been really responsive with stabilization funding, with preservation as a new strategy and as a new approach. So that's one. Let's protect the amount of progress we've made so far. The second lever, though, is beyond the protection, we've got to continue about what's looking at scale. What does scale look like? How can we produce more housing continuously, which takes 3 different buckets. One, we've got to increase supply. And the mayor has a lot of work to do in increasing supply. We've got phase 2 of the comprehensive plan that is coming up.
Right.
Let's maximize the density to the highest possible level that code currently can allow. Let's get that right as phase 2. Secondly, let's get our permitting process aligned and ready to really support people in a meaningful way. So we have an opportunity on that front. We also need to be looking at beyond permitting, design reviews, another area where we've got to get that reform moved forward and produce
speed up the
housing
process,
across income spectrums, market rate housing being a part of that solution. Beyond the supply focus there's also a lot of work to do on subsidy. And I think the mayor has committed to increasing resources to support the production of housing, the preservation of housing. Importantly, right now, operating maintenance services dollars for permanent supportive housing is a big area of opportunity that the mayor knows and understands, and we've got to invest in that.
Thank you very much. John Torrence, some final thoughts to wrap up here about where our affordable housing system is headed. What kind of conversation are we going to be having about this next year? Where do you want to guide that?
Yeah, I completely agree with Patience on her comments, and I think it would be good to point out that even compared to I think it was like 2023, that we've seen a massive drop-off in the amount of building permits currently at SDCI, at the Department of Construction.
Inspections,
we have a glut right now, but we are at a point where that's going to dry up really quickly. And so we've talked a lot about stabilization, but production needs to remain a focus going forward.
Okay, thank you for that. John Grant, you've heard a lot of ideas. Here's some final thoughts on where the mayor's office wants to assist with the affordable housing crisis in the near term and into the future, please.
Yeah, well, I think you're going to hear a lot of agreement from the mayor's office here. Like, we are absolutely committed to advancing affordable housing within the city of Seattle because of the tremendous need. And I think we do need a diversity of tactics, a diversity of strategies. The Office of Housing Investments that was just announced for 2,000 preserved or new units for affordable housing is a huge step in the right direction. Making this new investment in affordable housing with the Seattle social housing developer and supporting that leadership to do that. I think there's all these new tools that are at our disposal to make sure that we can make Seattle affordable for all. And that has been a commitment and a promise that this mayor has made to the city. And you'll be hearing more announcements to advance that mission and vision in the coming months.
All right, thank you for that. And we will be right back.
What are people saying on social media about the affordable housing crisis? One person writes, "Affordable housing units just don't pencil for the middle class anymore. The only way it works for developers is with government subsidies and tax incentives." Another person writes, "The main issue in Seattle was that they built a ton of studios and micro apartments quickly to add units, but it didn't match market demand, and so ended up vacant." We'd like to know what you think. Send us an email at contact@seattlechannel.org or find us on social media.
Great to have that feedback, and a big thanks to John Torrence, Patience Malaba, and John Grant. Really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Brian Callahan. We'll see you next time on City Inside Out.